Hi. So, continuing on from where we left off, I think in the last video with regard to the abdominal surgery, we were on day 3, and day 3 was the Monday, I think. So by this point I was just been moved around into the main ward, and I'd been visited by a physio on the Sunday. She was a part-time physio. She'd just kind of was coming in to help out because it was a Sunday, and she gave me advice to avoid how to avoid getting chest infection, coughing into a pillow, breathing deeply, etc., etc. And then she said I would get my physio come the next day on the Monday. Being honest, I didn't actually have a physio visit me again through the whole time. I was in there from the Monday to the Thursday. But she had said to me, get up, move as much as you can. And in my head, I had a young family. At this time I had my one boy, but also a wedding planned the following year. So there was no hanging around. I wasn't going to sit in bed and do nothing. So I started trying to get myself out of bed, just trying to walk as far in the ward as I could. So if it was just to the end of the ward and back, that was where it started. Maybe to the loo and back, just getting myself up and trying to get active. And so I started trying to do this as much as I could in the day. I think initially it was a couple of times a day. I think by the Tuesday I was going to the end of the ward and back a couple of times a day. So it was quite a walk, considering you've had your middle sliced open. So I was doing quite well with that. I started having visitors, which was lovely. I don't think you can understand how nice it is to have visitors when you're in hospital, just to give you that push and that comfort, and just to change your scenery as well. I also at this point was starting to go through things like they will run obviously your standard observations and checks, but they were doing stool checks, and they were starting to do other checks as well, urine checks, making sure that there was no infection, making sure there was no reason to look at anything else. Then I think it was just a bit of a general progression. I'd obviously lost weight, and I think I continued to lose weight. One thing I found very tough was the food. I was finding it unable to eat. I was struggling with water. I found that water was so harsh. I was struggling to get enough into me, so I did actually start with like a juice of flavoured water, and I found that I could at least get the fluids into me enough if I was sipping them through the day, and I'd probably be able to do about a litre and a half in a day to start with on the sort of end of the Sunday into the Monday. And that's something that you need to find a way to do, because I was struggling at first. I was definitely dehydrated. And then I think by the Tuesday I was able to start mixing that up, some water, some juice. My parents arrived back. They'd been out the country. They arrived back into the country on the Tuesday. And that was a real turnaround for me, because I was struggling with energy. I wasn't eating. I couldn't stomach any of the food. The soup wasn't really soup. I'd had the dietitian visit me. And she explained that because of the bowel surgery I had to start on a low fibre diet, then progress in the second week to a medium fibre diet, and then in the third week to a full fibre diet. So obviously I was given a list of foods that would be low fibre, so be aware of that. You would have to go through that. And the idea is you have to have everything reintroduced by week 3, otherwise you might get intolerances to certain things. So my mum and dad arrived on the Tuesday, and my dad's a really good cook, so he said, what can I do? And I said to him, if you can make me any kinds of low fibre soups. So I think I was having organic chicken soups, chicken and tomato soups with low fibre vegetables in there. I think it was things like peas and stuff like that, if I remember correctly. And when he brought that in, that was a big game changer. I think he brought it back the Tuesday night, and I could take like 1 or 2 spoons. That was it. Start with 1 spoon, but it tasted good. And looking back, one of the reasons for that was, I don't know whether it was medication. I think it was probably the medication. It could well be just going through what I went through. I'm sure a doctor or a surgeon could shed more light, but my taste buds were gone. They were shot. There was a lot of stuff, even when I got home for 3 or 4 weeks, I just couldn't enjoy. Couldn't enjoy a cup of tea. Couldn't enjoy chocolate. A little bit of it, but that's one of my vices, and I wasn't even liking the taste of that. So yeah, my dad made me a moderate flask of this soup, and overnight I downed the lot. So I texted him early morning saying, could you bring me a full flask of that? And then through the day, that was gone, I think, by lunchtime. And that was a real game changer. Getting that nutrition in me, getting my bowel working. I'm a big believer that turned me round, that good nutrition, that good food. So one thing I would say is if you've got anyone you can rely on, trying to get some decent food brought into you when you're in hospital just to help you with that recovery will be huge. And then I think it was the Wednesday, things really started to turn around. I was feeling a lot better. By this point I was walking to the end of the ward and back, I think about 4 times in the day. There was a little setback where I think they registered some C. diff in my stool. So they weren't particularly happy about that. They also wanted to make sure I didn't have infective endocarditis because I think I had an issue with my heart rate for a short period of time. And they were worried that maybe I had that, but that was clear. That was fine. They listened and said everything was fine. So by the Thursday, I was pretty much at the point where I was like, right, I need to get out of here. I couldn't sleep. I found it really tough because I didn't have a private room. Obviously, I was on the ward. The observations coming around every, I think it was 4 hours, again, all hazy, but I think it was 4 hours. So you may struggle to get to sleep, then you get to sleep, then you've got to be woken up to do your observations. So I would say for the whole 6 days, massively sleep deprived, couldn't get to sleep, and just got to the point of, well, I get what sleep I can. And then on the Thursday, so this is approximately 6 days after the surgery, that's when I was discharged. By that point, I think the Wednesday night or the Thursday morning, I can't remember which, I think it was the Wednesday, I must have walked the length of the ward and back about 6 times. And in the evening, coming back, the head nurse just turned to me and went, "You walking again?" And I said, "Yeah, well, that's what we're supposed to do, isn't it?" And she said, "Yeah, but no one does it." So, it's one of those things, you've got your rehab, be careful and safe, but do what you can. The more you do for yourself, the better. So that went through to the Thursday. I was discharged on the Thursday, extremely lucky that I had an amazing support network from obviously my wife, my mum and dad. My dad he actually set up a bed for me downstairs in what was my clinic at the time, so that I didn't have to do the stairs initially at home. That was all done for me. And I think the night I got home about 6, I think it was on the Thursday, maybe 5:30. And by 7 I passed out, and I think I slept for 13 hours. I did wait to take my tramadol because I was still on tramadol and paracetamol. And the tramadol, I would wake once in the night and take, I think. And I'll cover coming off of that relatively quickly. But I'll cover that in the next bit, because now obviously it's the point where I've got home. Extremely lucky to have that support network. I had friends who were offering to go and do shopping for my wife whilst I was in hospital, which we'll be forever grateful for. And if you don't have a support network, that is huge. I think so for instance, when I'm doing rehab with a client now, my first question has changed. It used to be, what was your operation, which is still the first question, but then it was, right, how many hours a week have you got, what can you do, what's your home setup like? Whereas now my first question is, what's your support network like? Because if someone doesn't have that support network, I become their support network, because you need that in those early weeks. You need those people who you can bounce off, who you can rely on, and they will never know how important they are in that recovery. And I think anyone going through any healing, be it mental, emotional, spiritual, or physical, their support network is key. And if you are that support network, give yourself a high five. You don't know what you're doing for that person, so keep doing it. You're a good friend or a good person, so that will never be forgotten. So yeah, look after yourselves, stay safe and stay well, and the next phase I'll bring you will be recovery from home and moving into my full rehabilitation from surgery, and the time frame of that and the pitfalls you might hit along the way. So look after yourself, take care, be primal.